He had just called down fire from heaven. He had just beaten 450 prophets of a false god single-handedly in front of an entire nation. And 24 hours later, he's sitting under a tree, begging God to let him die. If you've ever survived the crisis, then completely fallen apart the moment it was over, I need you to watch this one to the end. Because what God does next is going to feel almost offensive to how you think faith is supposed to work. This is 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah, the prophet who just won the single greatest spiritual victory in the Old Testament, runs for his life from one woman's threat, collapses in the wilderness, and prays, "It is enough, Lord. Take my life." Now, before I tell you what God does next, I want you to guess. A rebuke? A vision? A sign from heaven, like the fire on Mount Carmel just one day earlier? Stay with me, because the actual answer is stranger than any of those. And you're about to notice something God does twice in this story, not once, that changes how you should read every hard season you've ever had. Let's rebuild what actually happened to his body first, because the order matters more than you think. Elijah has just run roughly a full day's journey into the wilderness, after already standing all day on Mount Carmel, after outrunning Ahab's chariot to Jezreel. He hasn't slept. He's dehydrated. He's almost certainly not eaten a real meal in longer than he'd admit. Here's a question worth sitting with. Would you be thinking clearly right now, in his place? Because here's the plain, well-established science. When your body is that depleted, low blood sugar, no sleep, sustained adrenaline from days of high-stakes confrontation, your brain's ability to reason clearly, regulate emotion, and see a situation accurately drops. This isn't a fringe theory. It's basic, uncontested physiology. Every one of us has felt a version of it. The irritability when you haven't eaten, the 2 a.m. despair that looks completely different in the light of morning. That doesn't mean Elijah's fear wasn't real. It means his body had run out of the resources to carry that fear well. So here's the reveal. God's first response to a man begging to die wasn't a sermon, wasn't a rebuke. It was an angel touching his shoulder saying, "Get up and eat." And he says it twice. That's the first twice. Remember it. Now, here's where I want to be careful, because this matters. This isn't a story that reduces faith to biochemistry. It's a story that shows you how God actually treats human beings, as whole people, body and spirit together, not spirits who happen to carry bodies around. Scripture never once shames Elijah for needing rest. It doesn't skip past the meal to get to the real spiritual lesson. The meal is part of the spiritual lesson. God restores the body first because a depleted body cannot hear a still, small voice clearly. And God knows that, because he built the body. This is the same God who ties spiritual restoration to physical rest throughout Scripture. The Sabbath itself is God commanding restoration before it's even requested. Elijah sleeps again, eats again, and only then, strengthened by that food, the text says, for 40 days, does he travel to Horeb, the mountain of God. But here's where the second twice shows up, and it's stranger than the first. Because when Elijah finally arrives at that mountain, God doesn't show up the way you'd expect either. Elijah expects God in the wind. He's not there. In the earthquake. Not there. In the fire. Not there. Then, a still, small voice. And God asks him the same question, twice. What are you doing here, Elijah? Not to condemn him, to let him finally say the fear out loud, now that he has the strength to say it clearly. So notice the pattern. Twice, get up and eat. Twice, what are you doing here? God doesn't just meet Elijah once and move on. He circles back, patiently, until the whole man, body and soul, is ready. So what does this look like for you, this week, when you're the one under the tree? First, stop treating exhaustion like a spiritual failure. If you're at your lowest right after your biggest win, that's not proof your faith is weak. It's your body telling you it's depleted. Ask, when did I last actually rest? Before you ask, why don't I trust God more? Second, meet the body before you demand something from the soul. Eat something real. Sleep. Drink water. Before you force yourself into an hour of prayer you don't have the capacity for. Handling your body responsibly is a spiritual act. Third, don't make your biggest decisions from under the tree. Elijah asked to die in that state. If you're running on empty, that's not the moment to quit the job, end the relationship, or make the permanent call. And it's not the moment to expect God to show up loud. Rest first. Let your strength return. Then listen for the quiet voice. Elijah didn't need more willpower under that tree. He needed bread, water, and sleep. And then he was strong enough to walk 40 days to the mountain where God was waiting. If you're running on empty right now, maybe the most spiritual thing you can do today isn't to try harder. It's to rest and let God meet you at the mountain when you're ready to listen. What's your broom tree moment right now? And have you actually let yourself rest before trying to push through it? Tell me in the comments.